I want to bring you up to date on this drug, Avastin, so you understand exactly what we're talking about and why Obamacare needs to be killed before it does damage to us. Investors Business Daily, an outstanding editorial page. Sally Pipes, an outstanding lady. She's president and CEO and Taub Fellow in Healthcare Studies at the Pacific Research Institute. She writes, during the healthcare debate, few charges were more controversial than the one that government would decide who lives and who dies by rationing medical care. But based on a recent government healthcare ruling, I bet you didn't even know this, it looks as if that accusation wasn't such an exaggeration. In late December, the Food and Drug Administration moved to rescind the approval of a miracle drug that currently represents the last best hope for women in latter stages of breast cancer. Now, let's stop right there. How often are we lectured to and told by politicians and their favorite liberal constituency groups that we have to have regulations to protect us? So that's a given, right? Oh, yes, the more the better, the more, and particularly in health and safety. We need lots and lots of regulations. Well, what if these regulations deny you quality of life or longevity of life? And that's what we're talking about here. Each year, 17,500 women are treated with Avastin, a late-stage breast cancer drug that restricts blood flow to tumors, slowing their growth, shrinking them, sometimes even eliminating them. The drug typically extends a patient's life for a few months, but some super responders can go on living for years. Unfortunately, Avastin treatments for breast cancer can cost upwards of $90,000 a year. The government vociferously denies it, but almost no one in the medical community believes that the FDA's unprecedented decision to revoke Avastin's approval for the treatment of breast cancer only was completely unrelated to cost. In making recommendations, the FDA's Oncologic Drugs Advisory Committee is supposed to consider only clinical evidence. Yet one of its members, University of Nebraska oncologist Jean Grem, admitted that she was cognizant of the drug's hefty price tag. Women suffering from breast cancer have just one last shot at keeping Avastin a viable treatment option. Roche, the pharmaceutical company that makes Avastin, has begun the appeal process on the FDA's decision. The FDA's final ruling could come as soon as February. Got that? Well, it's February, and it hasn't come yet. While the appeal is underway, most insurers, including Medicare, will continue to cover Avastin. It appears that Medicare, though, is eager for a pretext to stop footing the bill for the drug. On January 6th, Palmetto GBA, one of the companies that determines regional Medicare coverage, posted a notice on its website stating that coverage of Avastin would cease to be offered to new breast cancer patients as of January 29. Its decision was quickly reversed because the FDA had given prior assurances that Medicare would continue to pay for the drug during the appeal process. If Palmetto hadn't changed course, though, breast cancer patients on Medicare in California, Hawaii, Nevada, Ohio, South Carolina, and West Virginia would have been out of luck. It's clear that government insurance programs such as Medicare and Medicaid will no longer cover Avastin if the FDA's ruling stands. So far, the government remains nearly alone in its belief that Avastin is not a legitimate breast cancer treatment. Both the Susan G. Komen Foundation and the Ovarian Cancer National Alliance have been publicly urging the FDA not to revoke its approval. So here we have people hanging in the balance, praying that this bureaucracy, a handful of people in this bureaucracy, don't cut their lives short. So far, the National Comprehensive Cancer Network, a nonprofit alliance of oncologists that produces treatment standards recognized in more than 100 countries, still supports the drug as a breast cancer treatment. Its support of the drug has thankfully persuaded a few insurers, such as WellPoint, to continue paying for Avastin, at least for the time being. The government drug rationing that begins with Avastin isn't going to stop with Avastin. Let me repeat. The government drug rationing that begins with Avastin isn't going to stop with Avastin. Dr. Donald Berwick, remember him, the Obama administration's recess appointee, heading up the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, has said that it's not a question of whether or not we will ration health care, but whether we will ration with our eyes open. Government drug rationing also threatens to have a dangerous impact on medical innovation. The reason Avastin is expensive is that Genentech, the division of Roche that developed it, spent $2.3 billion to research and develop the drug. If the federal government can arbitrarily decide not to pay for a drug based on its cost rather than its clinical effectiveness, pharmaceutical companies will be a lot less willing to spend billions and billions developing the next cutting-edge, life-saving medicine. Sally Pipes, Pacific Research Institute. Now, a couple of points. Why am I the only one talking about this? Why aren't the big media in Obama's face, in the face of that Secretary of HHS supercilious, jumping all over this issue? And Pipes is correct. This sets a precedent. We are going the way of the so-called NICE committee, or whatever they call it, over there in Britain, where they have various formulas, which includes cost, which includes age, which includes likelihood of survival, or quality of life, and all these other variables in determining whether or not they approve drugs and drug treatment. This is very, very serious. This is why we fight this Obamacare as thoroughly and on as many fronts as we possibly can. For the left, this is an ideological battle. For the left, this is a cause. For the left, it's a game. For the rest of us, we recognize this as life and death. You can have the best insurance policy on the face of the earth, and it won't matter if the FDA starts ruling out certain drugs. How come you liberal callers won't call in and talk about the most vulnerable about this issue? Women, mostly, late stages of breast cancer, where this drug is their only hope. They have to spend their last days fighting the bureaucracy, begging for help, praying that the wrong decision isn't made by a bureaucrat or a group of bureaucrats, calling their congressmen and senators, begging for help. Is this what we become? Is this who we become? I know the left has such little regard for life. Oh, yes, you do. Except your own, of course. But what about the rest of us? Is this the kind of society that we want? No, I don't think so. There's nothing compassionate about it. This is the soft tyranny I keep talking about. Look around you. You're living it.